Good evening, good evening. This is Lynette, and this is the 21st Century Watchman's channel, and it's about time. It's about time. It's a one-year chronological Bible study where we go through the books of the Bible, one book at a time, in time order. We're now in the book of Esther, chapter 6 through 10. We'll close it out this evening. Let's get started, shall we? On that night the king could not sleep, so he ordered that the book of records and memorable deeds, the chronicles, be brought, and they were read before the king. It was found written that there how Mordecai had reported that Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who were doorkeepers, had planned to attack King Xerxes. The king said, "What honor or distinction has been given Mordecai for this?" Then the king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the court of the king's palace to ask the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows, which he had prepared for him. Now Haman was getting ready to get this over with, but here we are getting ready to honor him, and so he had to back up off that. So here's the Persian Book of Kings that our guy King Xerxes was looking through. The king's servant said to him, "Look, Haman is standing in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king said to him, "What is to be done for the man whom the king desires to honor?" Now Haman thought to himself, "Whom will the king desire to honor more than me? He's already on one, souped up on himself, really feeling himself. So now here we go. Let me think of something big, because who else? I'm doing all the big stuff around here." So Haman said to the king, "For the man whom the king desires to honor, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and the horse on which the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal crown has been placed." Okay, he wants all the glory right here. "And let the robe and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most notable officials. Let him dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and lead him on horseback through the open square of the city, and proclaim before him, 'This is what shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Quickly take the royal robe and the horse, as you have said, and do this for Mordecai the Jew, who is sitting at the king's gate. Leave out nothing for all that you have said." So, as you can see, the king knows that our girl's uncle is a Jew. He doesn't know that Esther is a Jew, or her uncle / cousin is a Jew. He doesn't know that Esther is a Jew. So here we are. It says, "Leave out nothing of all that you have said." So Haman took the royal robe, I'm sure begrudgingly, and the horse, and dressed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the open square of the city, proclaiming before him, "This is what shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor." Now, this is definitely a case of the Lord making your enemies your footstool. He gave him a help up. He got elevated behind Mordecai's words. This is what Mordecai had not expected. Here we go. "Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his own house, mourning and with his head covered in sorrow. Then Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then his wise counselors and his wife Zeresh said to him, 'If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall in status,'" So this is if Mordecai, before whom you have become to fall in status, is of Jewish heritage, you will not overcome him, but will certainly fall before him. So Mordecai's a rising star, and you inching down below because you haven't told him around and tell everybody he's someone that the king is honoring. And these people are speaking a prophecy, if you will, about what is to come for Haman. While they were still speaking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurriedly brought Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared. Remember yesterday we left off with Esther preparing banquet for Haman and the king. He thought he was so honored. Let's go. So the king and Haman came to drink wine with Esther the queen. And the king said to Esther on the second day, also as they drank their wine, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be done." I'm going to give you whatever you want, baby. Don't worry about it. I got you out here in these streets. Then Queen Esther replied, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be spared as my petition, and my people be spared as my request. For we have been sold, and I and my people to be destroyed, killed and wiped out of existence." We're about to be annihilated up in here. Now, if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, because we still would have been alive. For our hardship would not be sufficient to burden the king by even mentioning it. Now, I know you might miss me, baby, but I'm good. I would have been good with just being a slave. But, I would even mention it because that was your decree, and that's, so be it. But then King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who dares to do such a thing?" Esther said, "An adversary and an enemy is Haman, this evil man." Then Haman became terrified before the king and the queen. She pointed him out. It was because of this evil man. He's the one that made the decree. He's the one that's trying to annihilate all of us. She couldn't wait till she told it. She picked her time, took her time, let it brew, let him anticipate it, got him excited about the answers, made him start asking about it. He asked for the first day, and now we're at the second feast, second dinner, and now she's dropping the bomb. Then in his fury, the king stood up from drinking wine and went into the palace garden to decide what he should do. But Haman stayed to plead for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm had been determined against him by the king. He knew it was curtains. See him out in the gardens, he's upset. And here's Haman trying to plead his case with Queen Esther. She's not having it. She's got her head to her. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he even attempt to assault the queen with me in the palace? Has he lost his mind? Is he touching the queen? What's he doing?" As the king spoke those words, the servants covered Haman's face in preparation for execution. They had brought the like a little sackcloth bag or something, some woven bag they put over your head before you get ready to hang you, so they don't have to see your face when you're making those contortions with your lips and and your cheeks and whatnot, trying to grit your teeth and they don't want to see all of that, so they just hang you with a bag over your face, get you prepared. Wow. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs serving the king, said, "Now look, there are gallows 50 cubits, which is 75 feet high, standing at Haman's house, which Haman made for Mordecai, whose good warning saved the king." Now they're telling it all. They're telling it all. And the king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Man, don't dig a hole for someone else, because you might have the opportunity to fall in it yourself. And then it says, then the king's anger subsided, because he was hot. And now it's subsided because he sees appropriate retribution happening. On that day, King Xerxes gave the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Because usually when an enemy is found, their spoils and their goods go to the crown. And Esther is the crown. And Mordecai came before the king because Esther had disclosed what relation he was to her. Now she's letting them know, he's my uncle. We like Mordecai, but I want you to know he's my uncle cousin. He's the man that raised me. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken away from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther put Mordecai in charge of the house of Haman. Now, the man who was going to take everything from Mordecai as being Mordecai's benefactor. Again, won't the Lord do it? Won't he make your enemy your footstool? He stepped him right on up. He leveled up. I'm just saying, this was what happened. All the wealth he had accumulated in all this time was given to Mordecai, whom he was trying to annihilate, and who he was jealous of, and who he was angered with because he would not bow down to him. Then Esther spoke again to the king and fell down at his feet and wept and implored him to avert the evil plot of Haman the Agagite and his plan which he had devised against the Jews, because the decree to annihilate the Jews was still in effect. Let's not get sidetracked. This was one thing. Here's the part two of this. Yes, he was a problem and he made the plot, but there's a decree going, sir. The law is going into effect. We need to get this law that's going into effect averted. And this is going to be a hard thing legally, because the king, could not go against his own law. So here we are dealing in that manner. And that's going to be not too easy of a task. So we're going to get some people together to word this bad boy just so. Then the king held out to Esther the golden scepter. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Then she said, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, and the matter is proper in the king's view, and I am pleasing in his sight, let it be written. So she's still talking to the king in a very, very nice manner. If it pleases the king. She told him what was up, but if it pleases the king, we have to learn how to speak to people. Even as wives and even as spouses, period, there's a level of respect that's due one another. And if it pleases, can we talk nicely? Do we know how to bow down to authority? Because he was still her king, and there was a level of respect. She just wasn't saying, and what you better do, and another thing, she was still conciliatory and understood the levels and still was working it. He was still willing, because he said everything, you could have anything up to half the kingdom was yours. And all she's asking is for her people not to be annihilated and for him to avert this law. So this is a great way to ask. This is just proper tone. I love this. And she says, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote in order to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. He had 127 provinces, and they were spread out. Everybody didn't elect to go back to Jerusalem to build up the wall and to rebuild the city. Everybody didn't elect to do that, and some people stayed within because of the comforts and they gotten used to the customs and the cushiness of it all. And some of them were still in the provinces of 127. So here we go. For how can I endure to see the tragedy that will happen to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he stretched out his hand against the Jews. He's done that. Also concerning the Jews, write as you see fit in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet ring, because he gave Mordecai the signet ring that he had given to Haman. Mordecai was elevated. For a decree which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring may not be revoked. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day. And it was written in accordance with everything that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, to the chief rulers, the satraps, and the governors and the officials of the provinces which extended from India to Ethiopia, which is Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, and to the Jews according to the script and their language. Think about all these different people. This is the Persian Empire. This is not Persia per se. This is all the people, the different lands that they had captured and brought into captivity, and they brought into subjection to them. And they had to make sure that whatever languages those people spoke, that they could understand the decree, so that there would not be any problem, that there would not be having any Jews annihilated. And they had to get this out too sweet real quick, right? Because of the fact that this was getting ready to go into effect. And so can you imagine doing this on horseback? This wasn't a plane ride. They weren't on the internet. They couldn't tweet this out to the world. This was going to have to be something that was done quickly. And so, but God. So here we are. He wrote a decree in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on the royal relay horses, the offspring of the racing mares. In it, the king granted the Jews who were in every city the right to assemble and to defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force that might attack them, their little children and women, and to take the army's goods as plunder. He's given them. And after you kill them, and if you defend yourself and you kill them, you have the right to take their stuff. You have the right to take their stuff. He's given them that right. The same right he would do when he captured or killed, or and brought a nation under subjection. He's given them that same leeway, that same honor. It says, on one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. I'm saying it twice. It just sounds better the second time around. A copy of the verdict was to be issued as a law in every province, and as a proclamation to all peoples, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the couriers who were mounted on the royal relay horses left quickly, urged on by the king's command, and the decree was issued at the citadel in Susa. Then Mordecai departed from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a large crown of gold, and with a robe of fine linen and purple wool. And the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. They were happy. This man was a part of the royal, the royals, period. He had a position. They were happy. He was not a bad man. He was a just man. And they were happy for him. Isn't that wonderful? For at that time, the Jews had a light and gladness and joy and honor. They were excited. You got somebody in there. You know how the parties get excited. Oh, we got so and so in the house. It's going to be a Democratic House, or it's going to be a Democratic Senate, or it's going to be a Republican Senate, or it's going to be an independent House, or whatever it is. We got somebody in there. It's going to speak for us. Same thing. This is how they felt. In each and every province, and in each and every city, wherever the king's command and his decree arrived, the Jews celebrated with gladness and joy, a feast and a holiday. And many Jews and many among the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews and their God had fallen on them. And on their gods, in parentheses, God is not mentioned in this English King James Version at all. Now in the 12th month, chapter 9, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, when the king's command and the edict were about to be executed, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews had hoped to gain power over them and slaughter them, it happened the other way around, so that the Jews themselves gained power over those who hated them. Isn't that just like God in the nick of time, the day before? It's going to happen because God likes the drama. God's with it. God's with the drama. He is high drama. The Red Sea, this moment here, God's with the moments. He loves this because God can do anything but fail. And no matter what we say, God's right on time. Right on time. The Jews assembled in their cities throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, to apprehend those who want to do them harm. And no one could stand before them, for the fear of them and their God had fallen on all the peoples. Remember, this is important to see. So this is an amplified version. It's giving more context and more reasoning or explanation for this fear. It doesn't say this explicitly in this passage at all, in the Hebrew or the English. Even all the officials of the provinces and the chief rulers and the governors and those who attended to the king's business supported the Jews because the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mordecai had power. For Mordecai was great and respected in the king's palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces, for the man Mordecai became greater and greater. So the Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them. And they did what they pleased to those who hated them. At the citadel in Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and they killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adalia, Aradatha, Parmashta, Arasai, Aradai, and Vizada, or Vizada. So I'm leaving his name in. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Jews' enemy, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. They just weren't. They weren't with that. They just didn't want to take the plunder. They didn't. They killed. They killed the people. They weren't. They didn't want the stuff. This was what you can do, and that's what you should do. And they didn't feel like it was right. And they didn't do it. On that day, the number of those who were killed at the citadel in Susa was reported to the king. The king said to Queen Esther, "The Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman at the citadel in Susa. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It shall be granted to you." So, they did that. What's still your petition? What is your further request? It shall also be done. Esther replied, "If it pleases the king, let it be granted to the Jews who are in Susa to act tomorrow, also in accordance with the decree of today, to let the dead bodies of Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows." And so it was. So the king commanded it to be done. The decree was given in Susa, and they hanged the bodies of Haman's 10 sons. So the Jews who were in Susa also gathered together on the 14th day of the month of Adar and killed 300 men in Susa, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. They didn't. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces assembled to defend their lives and rid themselves of their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them. A lot of folks hated them, right? I just wouldn't have been on that bandwagon. After I saw what happened to the other people, I'd been like, good. I don't have no beef. That's what I would have been, but apparently they were still with it. They were still gonna hold that beef. Wouldn't have been beef, chicken, none of that. Just saying. This was done on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made it a day of feasting and rejoicing. But the Jews who were in Susa assembled on the 13th and on the 14th of the same month. And on the 15th day they rested and made it a day of feasting and rejoicing. Therefore the Jews of the villages who lived in the rural towns make the 14th day of the month of Adar a holiday for rejoicing and feasting and sending choice portions of foods to one another. So they feast instead of fast. Now Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews who lived in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, obliging them to celebrate the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same month annually, because on those days the Jews rid themselves of their enemies, and as the month which was turned for them from grief to joy and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and rejoicing, sending choice portions of food to one another and gifts to the poor. Never forgot the poor. In all their rejoicing, they still didn't forget the poor. So the Jews undertook what they had started to do and what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is the lot, to disturb and destroy them. The lot is like dice. They're, I'm going to shoot some and see 7 to 11, trying to get them. But when it came before the king, he commanded in writing that Haman's wicked scheme, which he had devised against the Jews, was to return on his own head, and that he and his son should endure what he planned for the Jews and be hanged on the gallows. Therefore they call these days Purim, after the name Pure, which is Lot. And because of all the instructions in this letter and what they had faced in this regard and what had happened to them, the Jews established and made it a custom for themselves and for their descendants and for all who joined them, so that they would not fail to celebrate these 2 days as it was written, and at the appointed time annually. So these days were to be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim were not to cease from among the Jews, nor their memory fade from their descendants. Now, the Zohar teaches that there is a relationship between Yom Kippurim, which is a day of atonement, and Purim. Notice the similarity of the sound and spelling. In fact, Chi, or Ki, is a causative prefix often found in the scriptures. Note that on both days the pure, the lot is cast. Yom Kippurim, meaning a day like Purim. How about that? Interesting, isn't it? Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with the Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full power and authority to confirm this second letter about Purim. He sent letters to all the Jews of the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus in words of peace and truth, to establish these days of Purim, to be observed at the appointed times, just as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had established for them, and as they had established for themselves and for their descendants, with instructions regarding their times of fasting and their lamentations. The command of Esther established these customs for Purim, and it was written in the book, which is the book of the royal archives. And finally, Esther 10. King Xerxes imposed a tax on the land and on the coastlands of the sea, and all the accomplishments of his authority and strength, and the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, to which the king had raised him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus. Sounds like our boy Joseph, right? He was second only to the Pharaoh in that kingdom. See how it worked out? I'm just saying. And great among the Jews, and in favor with his men and with his many fellow people, for he worked for the good of his people and spoke for the welfare and peace of his whole nation. And there we end with Esther. There we end with Esther. What a beautiful thing, right? She was with her position, she was a beautiful girl, and that beauty gave her a position. It moved her, and she wasn't just beautiful on the outside; she was beautiful on the inside. And she had to go through a purification process like we did. And he loved her like Christ, and wanted to give her everything, like the Lord wants to give to us. Isn't that wonderful? I've got a few other insights before we end this book. How about that? They say that God's name is not in this book, but God's name is in this book. It is. It's in this book. It's in Hebrew, but it's in this book. Esther is related to the word nistar, which means hidden, and the word Megillah, which is related to the word megala, which means to reveal. Thus, the megala of Esther's name, in actuality altogether, it means the revelation of the hidden. That's what her name means, the revelation of the hidden. For Hebrew reads from right to left. So from this side, from Yud, all the way to He. It reads from right to left. So if you were reading it backwards, you would read left. You would read left to right, from left, the way we read in English. The letters that spell his name, Yahweh, which we call Yahweh, are the Y, the H, the V, and the H. The covenant-keeping one are in parentheses. So you see, this is the Y, the H, the V, and the H again, both the same letter, right? In Esther 1:20, when the king's decree, which he will make, is proclaimed throughout all his empire, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. That one, after Vashti had decided to give him the hand and she wasn't coming to the party. This is what it looks like. It's this way. We got from right to left, we have Yahweh. We have this right here. This is from left to right. From right to left, we have this for the H, the V, the H, and then the Y again. But if we go from left to right, reading this way, it's in code. So even though we can't see God, and it's in an acrostic way, and even though we can't see God in English version or in the, King James, in Hebrew, it's embedded in. And this the revelation of the hidden. God does intricate stuff. He's in this book. We just couldn't see it. So you can see that God's name is backwards. He's overruling, taking what man decided, he's taking it back. Wives will honor their husband. That's how he does it. This is what that's what it looks like. It's in the bold red letters. That's seeing Yahweh the way it's supposed to be written. So it's this one is here, this one is here, this one is here, and this one is here. This is for us, this is left to right, but they read right to left. And that's Yahweh backwards. Isn't that interesting? How interesting that for them is backwards. This is Yahweh, this is backwards. We read from, but this is right to left, and so it looks like it's not in there. But if you read it the other way and see this hidden word, it's there. And that's Esther 1:20. Let's keep going. The next time it appears, his name is forward in Esther 5:4, where Esther invites the king and Haman to her banquet. See again. We read right to left. Right to left gives us this. But if we read, now it's going forward in acrostic form, and here we go. That's Yahweh again. It's Yahweh. Is that interesting? It's there in Hebrew, though. And that means that we have to dig deeper and go deeper in this. And then again, Esther 5:13, if all this avails me nothing. And you read right to left, is God's name is backwards again. And so we're reading left to right, and that's backwards in Hebrew, because Hebrew reads from right to left. But Yahweh is there. He's in the book. Interesting fact. Martin Luther wanted this book thrown out of the canon because of the fact that it did not mention God's name in English. He didn't know that God hides and God does things in code. Everything is not revealed. God likes a mystery. And it's we have to ask him for the ability to uncover. It's in the book. He's in the book, all up and through Esther. These are only a few examples, but I wanted to let you know he's in the book. It's just in Hebrew. Let's learn it, shall we? These are my thoughts. Having said that, let's go. If you see how God is in the book, God's in everything he's still protecting them, he's in everything that they do, he's a part of it. And even though they didn't mention his name in English, he was mentioned in the book, and they thought about him. He was all embedded, he's all in there. Can we see God all up and through our lives? Is he hidden, or is he really revealed? Let's hope that he's both hidden and revealed. And if you feel convicted by anything you saw here, anything you read here, and you want to be a part of this great nation of Gentiles who loves God, we just love God. Please put yourself in the place of Esther and the Hebrew people who just love the Lord and look to him for their salvation. Let's join in and pray together, shall we? Father, it is written in your word that if I confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in my heart that you have raised him from the dead, I shall be saved. Therefore, Father, I confess that Jesus is my Lord. I make him Lord of my life right now. I believe in my heart that you raised Jesus from the dead, and I renounce my past life with Satan and close the doors to any of his devices. I thank you for forgiving me of all my sin. Jesus is my Lord, and I am a new creation. Old things have passed away. Now all things become new. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. If this is something that, this is a prayer that you prayed, put your name in the chat so we can praise the Lord with you. If you've said this prayer and you don't have a church home in your area, put your name and your city and your state in the chat, and we will help direct you to a church home that will love on you and help to develop and cultivate the gifts that God has put in you for his purpose. And finally, do me a favor if you don't mind. Like and share this page and subscribe to our channel. We would love to have you as part of our Watchman family, and we look forward to sharing more with you. God bless you. Know for sure that it's about time.